Christie.
I'm Christina.
Nice to meet you.
Hi, I'm Cynthia.
Nice to meet you. I'm the speech-language pathologist.
Oh.
And you're Sophia's
Mother.
mother.
Yes.
And you are her
Aunt.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
It's so great to have you both here today. So I guess let's get right to it. So I see in the information that you sent over, Sophia failed her newborn hearing screening, correct?
Yes, she failed her newborn hearing screening after birth. We followed up 3 months later, and we was recommended, as it was confirmed that she has a profound hearing loss in both ears.
In both ears, okay. So if any other early intervention or EI professionals contacted you?
Yes, I've been contacted with a physician, an audiologist, and a psychologist so far.
Right.
So I'm here today to learn how I can help my daughter communicate. But to be honest, I'm kind of overwhelmed with the whole situation.
Okay.
How do I know all of these services will help her?
Okay, that's definitely a valid concern. I understand you must be feeling very overwhelmed at this time, but I want you to know that you're not alone, because about 90% of all deaf children are born to hearing parents.
Okay.
So you're definitely not an anomaly. There are a lot of other people out there that are dealing with this. And I know this can be a difficult time for you and for your whole family, but I want to assure you that I and all the other professionals who are assigned to your daughter's team are going to work very hard to ensure that she has the brightest future possible.
Okay.
So that team of professionals is her early intervention team, so EI, as we abbreviate it, and we're here to help. EI has been proven to work for deaf children, especially in terms of improving their language acquisition. Studies have shown that, on average, deaf children perform better in language and literacy tasks when they are exposed to these early intervention services at an early age. So you're definitely doing the right thing by coming in, by seeing me, by keeping in contact with your physician, your audiologist, and all the other professionals. Yeah, so that's kind of the whole set of information that goes along with early intervention.
Wow, that's really comforting to hear. I know it's been extremely difficult for my sister-in-law and my brother these past few months, but how do speech and language services fit in with the rest of Sophia's treatment now?
That's a great question. So speech and language is my area of expertise, and this is where I come in to help Sophia. Language development is essential for children. If you think of any young child that you've ever known, how they acquire language is really fantastic, and they're able to learn it just by exposure, and then by the time they go to school, they're able to take that knowledge from what they've heard, and they're able to use it to write and to read and everything else. So it's going to be really important for Sophia to get that language exposure, especially at this early age, and not just exposure to English, but perhaps exposure to American Sign Language, or ASL, which is traditionally the language for deaf people that they use.
So you mentioned sign language. To be honest, I know nothing about this sign language, but I want to do whatever it takes to help Sophia.
Right.
How can I learn ASL, and isn't it totally different from spoken English?
Well, you can learn ASL just like any other language. So taking classes would probably be your best bet, so you can work with a teacher. I want to be honest with you, it can be very difficult to acquire a second language later in life. But with your determination to do all you can for your daughter, I'm sure you'll do just fine with those classes. As you asked, ASL is extremely different from spoken English, primarily because in English we speak, we have vocal productions, and in sign language we have hand movements. So that difference alone is going to definitely create a challenge, but just like English, American Sign Language is based on a few basic parameters. So you have your hand movement, your hand orientation, so kind of the way your hand is positioned in space, the shape of the hand, and the location of the hand. So you're going to kind of stick with those few basic parameters and then branch out to learn the rules of American Sign Language. It will take some time to learn, but ASL can be an incredible communication resource for your daughter, especially if she doesn't see any improvements from an amplification device like a hearing aid or cochlear implants, because those don't necessarily work the same way for every patient.
Well, how can I get my husband on board? At this time, he's pushing for the cochlear implant and amplification devices, and he has no interest in ASL.
Yeah, I'm really close with my brother, and he's having a really hard time with Sophia's diagnosis.
Right.
He's much more interested in having Sophia get the cochlear implants
Okay.
and not even worrying about learning ASL. He thinks it won't help her at all.
Okay. Well, I definitely think it's going to be important for him to come in and sit down so that I can share this information with him, so that it's it's coming from my professional opinion, and we're all here as a team. So I would like to see him here in the future if that's possible. But I do understand that he's dealing with a lot right now. It can be very overwhelming when this kind of situation arises for parents, especially because you're both hearing parents and your child is deaf. I mean, it's something so basic that we don't think about a lot of the time, but that's going to create a lot of challenges for you as a family. That being said, I do want to emphasize the importance of ASL, and I would reiterate this to your husband, that because your daughter isn't going to have access to the oral stimulus of spoken English, it's going to be very difficult for her to learn English, and that by learning sign language we can help her bridge the gap between sign language and English, instead of having no gap at all, or having just this gap here in her language learning. You want her to have a language resource to depend on.
Okay. I want to explore every option at this point. My daughter's going to be 1 in a few months, and even if she can't speak her first word, I want her to be able to sign things like mom and dad,
Right.
like all the other kids.
Right.
So where can I go and start learning?
Well, a great place to start would be any local community colleges near your home. I'd also recommend the New York School for the Deaf and the Sign Language Center in New York City. The School for the Deaf is local, it's in Elmsford, and they actually offer free ASL classes to parents of children who are in their program. They have early development programs for young children who have just been diagnosed, like your daughter. I also don't want to forget to mention to you how important it is to stick with your audiologist. The audiologist is going to be key in looking at amplification devices and those cochlear implants. That's not my area of expertise, so I would forward you to the audiologist on that one.
But correct me if I'm wrong, wouldn't you be able to help me with all this stuff?
Right, well, as a speech-language pathologist, it's not within my scope of practice to determine whether or not she'll benefit from amplification devices or cochlear implants. I adhere to this scope of practice. There are certain things that I am an expert at and certain things that I'm not, and I want to let you know that up front. That's why we have a team of professionals working for Sophia. I'm here to help with her language development milestones, and I'm going to be here every step of the way as your family tackles learning ASL and beginning to prepare Sophia for school. Language learning is extremely important, and I'm trained to help Sophia develop her skills so she can integrate her knowledge of sign language with her knowledge of English. She'll need to understand English in order to be successful academically, and that's where I come in.
Okay, I understand. So when would we begin therapy?
Okay, so I'd like to schedule a session, preferably again with both you and your husband, and of course Sophia's aunt if you'd like to come back, so we can start work on creating a language learning environment for Sophia, both in the therapy session and then to carry over at home. My hope is that you and your husband and other family members can carry these strategies from therapy to the home so Sophia can benefit from increased language exposure.
Okay. Thank you so much. We'll schedule that appointment right away.
Great, again, it's wonderful to meet with
Nice
you.
to meet you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, Mr. and Mrs. Morgan.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Hi, nice to see you.
Nice to
guys.
see you again, Mr. Morgan. Okay, so let's get started by getting to some of your concerns. You mentioned you wanted to talk about Sophia's future in literacy and reading.
Yes, I'm concerned about Sophia learning to read before school starts. Why is it so much harder for deaf children to learn to read than it is for hearing children?
That's a great question. So current research agrees that deaf children tend to exhibit this greater difficulty in literacy due to their restricted access to the phonology of English. You may not be familiar with that term, phonology, but it basically describes the set of sounds in our English language and how we combine sounds to produce meaning and to create words and sentences and all that. So because deaf children like Sophia cannot hear these sounds and this phonology, they can't learn it in the same manner that hearing children do. Hearing children are exposed to the language orally at first, so from hearing it. And once they've learned the ropes, so to say, they're able to draw connections between spoken English and written English. These connections are essential for reading skills. So obviously deaf children like Sophia will be at a disadvantage here.
Right. So I know you're working on language development with Sophia in therapy, but are there any things that we can do, my wife and I, at home with Sophia that will help her learn how to read?
Oh, absolutely. So I actually have some literature for you both on two specific strategies that have been proven to help deaf children improve their literacy. The first is called fingerspelling.
Okay.
And basically what it is in English with the hearing children or the hearing child, when you're helping them learn to read, you might tell them to sound it out, right? That's very common.
Yes.
With children, and they try to sound it out because they've heard the word, they can make that transition from what they've heard to what they see on the page. With a deaf child, they can't do that process, right? So something called fingerspelling can really help them.
Okay.
And basically what we do is we associate a picture of an object, or the object itself, so maybe a ball or a toy, with the full sign for that object in ASL. And then we break it down. We fingerspell it, so we go letter by letter. And I'm sure you guys have become comfortable with the ASL alphabet since since we started therapy a year ago. So this should be no problem. So basically it's, and we'll work on it together. We're making a connection between the picture of the object, or the object itself, the full sign, and then the fingerspelled sign.
Okay.
And that helps, or that will help Sophia make a connection between ASL and the written language. Okay. I also have another technique that's going to be a bit easier for you to include into your daily life, and that's called shared reading. So this is something I would recommend to any set of parents that want to enhance their child's literacy and their language acquisition. Reading to your child is wonderful. It's a great way to expose them to spoken language and written language together. But with Sophia, she's not going to be able to get the full benefits of that spoken English, so what I would suggest you to do is to incorporate sign language into reading time.
Okay.
So that as you're reading along the page, and Sophia can see your lips moving, she can see the illustration on the page, and then if you add in that sign component, you, again, enhance that connection between sign language, written language, and spoken language, so that she can start to learn, okay, when I'm making these signs, they translate to this English word on the page.
Okay.
So that's going to be very important. And I just wanted to mention one last thing quickly. I know when we first met, you were both dealing with Sophia's diagnosis and all the challenges that come with being hearing parents to a deaf child. If you wouldn't mind sharing with me how things improved for you two in terms of handling her condition, has there been any improvement?
So as you know, I wasn't here for the initial first meeting.
Right.
I wasn't quite ready to deal with the whole ordeal, and when Sophia was diagnosed, it really took me by surprise. But after my wife learned ASL and taught Sophia how to sign Dad, I realized that I really needed to get involved.
Yeah, he's been taking classes at one of the places that you recommended.
Great.
And it's really helped. So far, things have been going well.
Great. So I'm so glad to hear you're both feeling better about the whole situation and we're all on the same page. That's going to be really important to all of our work with Sophia over the coming years. We're going to be transitioning soon out of early intervention and into her preschool years. So there are going to be a new set of challenges ahead, but I'm fully confident that we'll be prepared to handle them as a team going forward. And definitely keep me posted on how you guys are feeling about anything we try in therapy, anything I suggest you at home, so that we can create the best plan possible for Cynthia. So let me leave you with this literature on finger spelling and shared reading. You can take this home with you today. And thanks again for coming in.
All right,
All right.
thank you.
See you
Thank
both.
you
So
so
nice
much.
seeing you
Nice
again.
seeing you.